Feeding problems in infants and children. As you can imagine, it's a very broad topic. I'd like to share with you some of my insights and some of the caveats that you can think about when you're faced with a child that you're worried about who's not feeding and drinking as well as you would like. It's a very stressful time, when a parent has a child who doesn't eat and drink and poo and wee like you want them to. It really is a stressful time. Everybody wants a child who just eats and drinks and sleeps and doesn't have problems. So only this week I was reminded of some of the difficulties that a baby can have right from birth. And remember, all children are different. And I've got to tell you as a parent is that when you have your second child, you'll often come to the conclusion and realize that you are not the problem. Often parents blame themselves and they think that there's something that they should be doing to overcome these problems. Often this is down to your child. It's who they are. And remember the genetics that you have. Some children are not designed to be huge, tall people. They're not designed to be as big as every other child that you imagine them to be. They're going to be who they really are. And from a child's point of view, generally, the most important principle is make sure that you give them the right things. You decide what they have. Let them decide how much. That's the most important thing. The quantity that they have, they will regulate. Don't use food to sedate, to get them to sleep. Don't use food early on in life as a behavior modification technique. Use food for nutrition. Use food in a way, and remember, right from birth, it takes time to establish feeding. A new mother learning to breastfeed, it's so difficult. How do you know how much your child needs? Do you have enough milk? All these questions that get asked. So I think a lot of the feeding difficulties is our own anxieties and emotional sort of ideas as to what should and shouldn't happen. And of course, when we're worried that a child and a baby's not getting enough, we panic. We're worried. We blame ourselves. Mothers blame themselves. So what I would say is make sure that you go to antenatal classes, make contact with a good clinic sister that can give you those techniques. Make sure that you connect with a pediatrician who you can chat to, who can give you help with feeding and advice. Making sure that you can come in my rooms, we have a free weighing service that we allow all parents to come in. Sometimes with feeding in that first couple of weeks, the only way you know that your child's gaining weight is by doing a weight. How do you know your child's getting enough? Are they satisfied? Are they feeding long enough? Obviously, there are lots of medical problems that can cause feeding problems. But I must say, those are very rare. Rare things occur rarely, common things occur commonly. When a child doesn't want to latch and feed, the immediate reactions, my child's got a lip tie, my child's got a tongue tie, and that's not the case necessarily. Blaming some anatomical problem for a feeding problem. Sometimes, a child's got to be hungry to feed. There are lots of other reasons. Are they jaundiced? Are they kind of sleepy? They've got to be often woken up, fed, getting into a routine. That's what we do as pediatricians. And when children are a little bit older, remember, sometimes, we've got this perception that they've got to have a lot of feed. Sometimes the formula tins recommend a certain amount, and that doesn't necessarily tailor the amount that your child needs. That's a general amount. It's like saying, what is the average amount of feed that a life form on earth needs? It's a wide variation. Your child's your child. We've got to treat your child, give you the confidence to realize what is individual and what your child needs. Have a tailored, specific idea about what is right and wrong. Feeding, some children are very sensory. They've got textural, they're hypersensitive to smell. They've got sensory processing problems. They don't like texture, smell. Some children are fussy. And of course it frustrates, because you want your child just to be this perfect child that just eats and drinks. And what I would say is connect with a pediatrician, connect with somebody who understands nutrition and can demystify those problems. In my opinion, a lot of the feeding problems that I encounter when children sometimes drink too much and they don't want to eat. I find in my practice a lot of the time that eating problems are often related to children that don't sleep well. So they're given lots of bottles of milk to drink at night. They get all the nutrition through a liquid form. Then they're not hungry. They don't want to eat. So a sleeping problem becomes a drinking problem, becomes an eating problem. Very common scenario. Try to avoid giving your child lots of sugary carbohydrates and juices. It fills them up. They don't want anything else. They don't want to eat. So, also they look at us as adults. They look at us as a role model. We've got to think about things like that. Is there a family history of allergies, milk allergy? Is there a family history of intolerance, irritable bowel syndrome, sensory processing problems? All these things can play a role. So it's just a bit of an insight and a philosophy to realize that you're not necessarily the problem. Children are individual. Make sure that you decide what they have, and they will decide how much. Monitor their weight gain. Monitor their growth. If your child is sleeping well, growing well, you're giving them the right things, then you're pretty close to where you should be.